Welcome to Lead Pods, the official leadership podcast from USMB for pastors and church leaders, where our goal is to increase our impact together.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 63 of the USMB Lead Pods. My name is Matt Ayersman, and I'm grateful to be your host today. And you're in for a treat. Today, we're talking to the boss man himself. We've got Don Morris with us today, the National Director of USMB, and a really important topic, talking today about sabbaticals. We hear a little bit about Don's sabbatical. He just got off of one this summer, so we hear what he did this summer to kind of take some time to refresh and retool for his ministry, but also just kind of the importance of sabbaticals in general, what they are, what they're supposed to be for, how important they are for us as ministry leaders. And I don't know about you, but I know for me specifically, taking that much time off almost seems impossible. But Don reminds us that it is like super important, both for ourselves personally, but also it's just good for our churches. When a leader is healthy, the church is obviously healthy. So lots of good reminders here from Don today. I think you're going to enjoy hearing from him. So let's take a quick break and get to our friend Don Morris.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Mennonite Central Committee. MCC's Serving and Learning Together SALT program is a year-long, cross-cultural experience that gives young adults the chance to dive deep into another culture, live out their values, and gain hands-on experience. The skills, knowledge, and personal capacity they build while experiencing another culture will exercise their faith muscles and set them up for success in their future career. Learn more at mcc.org/SALT.
All right, my friends. Well, today I am speaking to the man, the myth, the legend, the man who needs no introduction. We're talking to Mr. Don Morris today. Don, as you know, is the National Director of USMB. He's been involved for many years, for 18 years total for USMB work. So, Don, thank you so much for being here today and for all you do for leading us. We're grateful for all that you do.
Thanks, Matt. Good to be with you.
Good to have you back. I think this is your second time on Lead Pod, so welcome back. It's been a little while.
Yeah, it has been a while. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think most people listening probably know who you are, but for maybe if people don't, or maybe they don't know the details, just a quick bio on what you've done that led up to this point. What does the National Director even do? Just a little bit of bio before we dive into the today's topic.
Okay, well, I'll try not to give too many details, but I actually thought I was going to be a farmer all my life, and went to Kansas State University, got a agronomy degree, and went back to Ulysses, Kansas. Jana and I had been married for a while when we did that, and farmed for 10 years, and then short story, but just God called us to ministry, and went to Fresno to the seminary in 1988 and graduated in 91, and went to Mennonite Brethren Church in Weatherford, Oklahoma, Pine Acres Church, served there for 13 years, and then started working for the U.S. Conference in 2004. As Director of Mission USA, and then that kind of morphed into the National Director position. Yeah, it's been good.
Awesome. Very cool. You do a great job leading us, so thank you for all that you do.
Yeah.
So our main topic today is we're talking about sabbaticals. So we kind of kicked this off because you had one recently, and we're going to spend some time talking about what that was like for you personally, what you learned, why you felt like it was an important thing to do. We'll dive in there, but I also just want to talk about sabbaticals in general. What they are, why they're useful. It is one of those weird things where most, corporate secular jobs don't offer something like this. So how come the church does? Where does it come from? Why is it a good idea? Just love your thoughts on that. So maybe first, let's talk about yours. So we were chatting just briefly beforehand. You had one sabbatical before back in 2011, and you just had one this summer, right? You wrapped it up this summer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, either one or both of them, just walk us through, like, what was it, just kind of time on the calendar for you to have one? Did you kind of feel like you needed one either time, or how do they kind of start off?
Well, organizations that do see the value in sabbaticals often provide a sabbatical every 7 years, and that's somewhat biblical. The number 7 is kind of important in Scripture and to God. We have the Sabbath day of rest, the seventh day every 7 years, taking some time off. So that does follow sabbatical, kind of the language itself of sabbatical kind of follows the Sabbath. So that every 7 years, it's kind of thought, well, there's a need to break away and to get, yes, that rest, that rejuvenation, that replenishment, and maybe even some retooling, so to speak, for the work that is ahead. So, probably the first question that is asked by people that aren't used to sabbaticals, or why sabbaticals, or what's this all about, is, well, in my work, I don't get a sabbatical. So why do pastors and, oftentimes professors, why a sabbatical? And oftentimes that's looking at like 3 months. And I'm an advocate of it being at least 3 months. I've had some people that have tried to shorten that up and make it like for a month or whatever, and that just does not really serve the purpose of what a sabbatical should accomplish. But, to answer that question, there are some peculiar things about being in ministry that a lot of people that aren't in full-time ministry might not understand. And I want to say it's the constant giving out of yourself. You're constantly giving and giving and giving. So many stories of pastors, you go to the store, you see somebody from the church, you have to be on. You can't be off. You can't be in a bad mood. You have to be able to be present, so to speak, pretty much 24/7, 7 days a week, for the most part. So the time to be able to devote to, well, I'm not giving, I can maybe receive some rest and do some things that allow God to feed me during that period of time, are really, really crucial. And here in a little bit, I want to talk about, how even adrenaline works in the midst of that, and in the pastorate and in ministry. I won't go into that right now, but I want to talk about that later, because that's a piece of it. But I would say, for me, as I'm an advocate for sabbaticals among our pastors, and I try to encourage our pastors and ministry leaders to take sabbaticals, is that the value that's received for them, for replenishment for themselves, but also they're going to be better at what they do when they come back. So the church is going to benefit as well, as a pastor or ministry leader enjoys the time away and is replenished or retooled through a sabbatical. So, I don't know if that's enough of a start. I really think there are kind of three elements to sabbaticals that are important, and that would be rest, like I mentioned, renewal, and then retooling. Those would be kind of the three things that I think sabbaticals should accomplish.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe we can dive into those a little bit more. But one thing you were saying that I was thinking about when you were talking there is when we go on vacation, right? We're usually gone 1 week, maybe two. And I don't know how you feel, Don, but at least for me, when I'm getting ready to leave for a vacation, and right when I get back from a vacation, and even during the vacation, all I can think about is all the things I'm gonna need to do to be gone for a week.
Exactly.
If you're gone for a week or two, the week or two leading up, you're probably stressed. While you're away, you're probably feeling bad that you're missing whatever. And then when you get back, you probably have a pile of things waiting for you. So is that kind of one of the main reasons why a longer one is necessary? Because I do think even if you have a great week away, really the before and after and even during weighs on you while you're away, right? So is that part of why you need to have a longer one?
Yeah, that's a great point and a great distinction. I don't consider sabbaticals to be like a vacation, although oftentimes you will incorporate some vacation kind of like things into a sabbatical. I did on my sabbatical. But a vacation, you're right, it takes time to unplug. And somebody told me before I took this last sabbatical, you can expect to feel bad for a few days as you kind of unplug and get prepared for being off for 3 months. And I did. I just felt lousy for a few days as my body was adjusting. And when you go on a sabbatical, I think it's easier to think, okay, I don't have to think about all of that stuff because it's not coming back at me in a week or 2 weeks. There's going to be 3 months here. And so I really can allow my mind to detach from that. But when we do that, our bodies respond and say, whoa, what
Yeah.
is going on here?
This is not normal.
You're not thinking normally, you're not acting normally. So, but I think that's just a sign of how much we need that. We need to be able to allow our bodies and our minds, our souls to rest and to be renewed.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's really good. And I think you also mentioned retooling, and I don't have the handbook in front of me, but I know that at Ridgepoint where I work, part of the kind of expectation, again, it's mostly for rest and rejuvenation, I think. But there's also, like you mentioned, there's this expectation that while you're away, you're also gonna learn and kind of, like you said, retool yourself for ministry, come back, both refresh, but also hopefully some kind of new perspective or new skill or something that you can incorporate into your ministry, right? So I know a lot of people often, maybe they'll go to an extended conference, or maybe they'll take some time to write. I know writing is often a component of a sabbatical.
Mhm.
Maybe just having an excuse to go to other churches and not have to serve. Maybe you'll pick up on things that other people do. So can you talk more about that, the retooling or the education part of it?
Well, I think that needs to fit the person and what they want to accomplish. That oftentimes, I think it's really important to have a plan going into sabbatical. You don't just start one and then try to figure it out. You have a plan going into it. I wrote out a plan for our leadership board, presented that to them. Part of that was that I would read some books and then write a book report on those books, so I could kind of synthesize the things that I read, and so I did that. They've received the book reports. But for me, another big piece was I just wanted to be able to read the Bible for reading the Bible and not to prepare something.
Okay.
And so I did quite a bit of that, just reading the Bible and not having a start or stop point. And I really enjoyed that. And so that fed my soul a lot. And I just find that I don't always have time for that. And then another thing for me was to spend some time just thinking about, because I'm getting older. I don't know how much time, in ministry that I have left. And that's one thing I wanted to take before God and say, Lord, what are you saying to me about the time that's remaining in ministry, and how long is that? What kind of tread is still on the tires that you want me to use up? And so I did. I spent a considerable amount of time, and even kind of a special 1 week time of taking that before God and listening. So, those are some of the things that I think going into it. If you can be intentional going in, then coming out, you can do some evaluation. Did I accomplish that? Was that profitable, valuable? And I would say yes for me, and reading the books and kind of allowing that to speak to me, reading the Bible and just enjoying that, spending some extended time just in prayer about a specific thing. Just wonderful experience. So, I want to back up and kind of from the beginning and just express my appreciation for our leadership board of saying, yes, we want you to do this. We want you to take a sabbatical. That's a great gift. And then also a lot of people might think, well, if I'm going to do some special things, how would I do that? I don't have the money for that. The church doesn't have the money for that. There's a really cool thing provided by MB Foundation, and we're partnering with MB Foundation as U.S. conference in promoting Bless Your Pastor. So you can find that on our website or MB Foundation's website. And Jana, my wife, and I just went through a course on financial principles and ideas and management through Bless Your Pastor, and MB Foundation provided $3,000 for me.
Wow.
That's available to any lead pastor. You can go through that program and they will provide that. You can elect to have that go to retirement fund or a sabbatical, one or the other. So I used it for sabbatical, and it allowed me to be able to have that 1 week time with the Lord. And then my wife and I were able to do a special vacation together. So, there are resources out there. There are a lot of ideas out there about what you do on sabbaticals. It doesn't have to be a big question mark over your head. What am I going to do for 3 months? It can be very intentional and yet free from a lot of the rigid kind of things that we kind of find ourselves doing quite often, or maybe too often.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's good to hear all that. And I want to hear a little bit more about your time specifically. But one other thing that, as you were talking, again, it brought to my mind is, again, I think another kind of roundabout way where it helps the church is if you, or, for USMB, if a leader's gone for an extended period of time, that kind of forces the team around them to learn new skills, to kind of step up in leadership, perhaps. So, like, I'm thinking for myself, if I do take that time away, there'd be a lot of things that have to be covered, right? There's a lot of, each of us do a lot, or else we wouldn't have a job, right? And so in some ways, it might kind of strengthen our teams, strengthen our congregations, strengthen our leadership teams, for people to kind of learn new skills and kind of pick up tasks. Like, did you find that to be true when you were away?
I did. One of the things that it forced was our board chair had to pick up quite a bit of the slack, and so he was glad that I came back. So there is some of that, certainly, and there is a little bit of thought sometimes by pastors or ministry leaders, I'm indispensable. If I go away, things are going to fall apart, or if I go away, it'll just prove that I'm not all that valuable. That's kind of conversely, how we might think about it. But really, we need to think, yes, other people can pick up the slack. And yes, it's okay if I don't answer an email for 3 months. I'm going to survive. The people that wanted me to reply are going to survive. And if it's really, really important, then somebody can get in touch with you or make a decision about something. And that's good for them to make those kinds of decisions. So God's work will continue forward. It's not going to be completely dropped. It's not going to go away. I did try to find a period of time in the year where maybe things are a little slower, and that helped somewhat. But the other thing, if you prepare well in advance, you can kind of gear up for knowing you're going to be off at a certain time, and prepare yourself and prepare others for that. So it's not just, next week you decide I'm going on a 3-month sabbatical. That doesn't work very well.
Right. All right. Well, I'd love to hear more about your time specifically. So you mentioned that you kind of read the Bible without really an agenda. You're just read a lot of books. So tell us more about what you did. So did you come away feeling really refreshed? Were you ready to get back at it? Just tell us more about what did your days look like? Did you just sleep in? Just tell us more about what did those 2 months look like?
No, I had trouble sleeping in, but I did take some naps, and those were really nice. Not used to doing that on a regular basis. So I went in intentionally wanting to do several different kinds of things. I wanted to do some home projects. I wanted to use my hands rather than my head. And that was so refreshing, just to do some things, work around the house. There were some repairs that needed to be made, and I got those done. My wife and I like to garden, so we did a lot of that, especially at the beginning of the sabbatical in April, when we were planting things. That was enjoyable, just doing that with her. Taking a nap in the afternoon, if I wanted to, I could do that and not feel guilty about it. I did go to the ICOM summit in Brazil, and that was something that I knew I was going to be doing in the midst of the sabbatical. So that was somewhat maybe kind of breaking it up a little bit. But the time that I spent the week that I was talking about before with God, I incorporated that in Brazil. And, and that was a really good way of taking advantage of that time in Brazil and making that really special. And I do have to admit that there were a couple of times when I allowed some emails to come in, and I did respond. And that was more or less a feeling of, if I don't do that, then it's really going to be a problem when I get back. And so it's just easier to take care of it now. But I found, Matt, when I did that, I got drawn back in. My mind went back to it, and it took a little while to kind of key myself to get back out of that again. And so I don't recommend that. I did it because I felt like I had to do that, expedite things, but yeah, we can get easily pulled back into things if we're not careful.
Yeah.
So I've noticed some people that are on sabbatical right now, I cannot get a hold of them, and that's a good thing. They have intentionally made it almost impossible to get a hold of them.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way that a sabbatical should be.
I want to hear more about yours, but just real quick, while we're there, I think you mentioned something about like we all struggle with guilt, or we might think, heaven forbid, the church will crumble if I'm gone, or the kingdom of God's going to crumble if I don't do my job. Can you talk more about that? Because I think we all have that guilt, that some of it's appropriate, like we need to work hard, and that's part of the puzzle as well. But how long did it take for you to get over that, and why do you think we struggle with that so much? I guess it's just natural self-importance, but I imagine it'd be hard to get out of that framework.
Yeah. Well, and for me personally, it's one of the things that I admit about myself, and that is I've struggled with it throughout my ministry life, and that is that if I do enough, then God is pleased with me. That kind of mentality.
Yeah.
If I perform, then God's happy. If I don't, then God's unhappy. Or if I don't do enough, or if I do a little bit more, then he'll be happier with me. And that's just terrible theology. And I know that, but sometimes I allow myself just to think that way. And so going into a sabbatical, you're going to be out of it for 3 months. God can't be pleased with that, me not doing anything. And so, yes, you have to think through that and to say, no, actually, you're honoring God by taking that time of refreshment. And, I know people say this, and they might give messages about it, about rest, and that Jesus got away from the crowds. But yeah, he did. He got away from the crowds. He didn't allow that to dictate how he was going to be in relation to his Father, and also in just the way that he was able to handle life and the pressures of ministry. He got away from the crowd. He went up to the mountain. He went away to pray. He left the disciples and let them go off by themselves. He did all those things that I think are examples to us that it's okay. Jesus didn't heal everyone. There were many that followed him that he didn't touch. And so thinking that we have to perform and perform and perform and do more and more and more, that just plays into this whole thing of why we get depleted. And while I'm there on that word, Matt, I just want to say, as I travel around, as I do work in the conference, and as I talk with pastors and ministry leaders, I'm finding that pastors and ministry leaders aren't just tired right now, they're depleted. Coming out of COVID, whether that's part of it, or whether it's just our society and our culture right now, people are grumpier than they used to be, I think.
Amen.
And they share that much more easily with pastors and leaders than they used to. But I'm just finding men and women in the ministry are tired, but they're more than that, they're depleted. And we've got to do something about that. If we don't, then we're going to be dealing with a lot of burnout. And if we have burnout, it's going to mean people leaving, and people are leaving the ministry. There's the great resignation that has gone on in the church and really in other places in our society, but the church is suffering as well. So what's that all about? And if we just kind of got a blind eye to that, that's not going to serve us well. So, I will sit down with any church council or deacon board or elder board or whatever it is and advocate for your pastor to be given the opportunity, and not just your lead pastor, other ministry leaders, people on staff, associate pastors, worship leaders. They need that time away to get refreshed, renewed, and retooled, and your church is going to benefit from that. And it's not saying that your secular job is less important, but please try to understand that there are some dynamics in ministry that, like I said before and earlier, of giving and giving and giving and pouring out that needs some time to be replenished. A lot of pastors and ministry leaders are working off an empty tank. So they fill it up just enough to be able to do the next ministry thing, and then the tank gets empty again. And pretty soon you're running on fumes, and that can only last so long, and then you're in real trouble. So, and I said I wanted to talk a little bit about adrenaline, and I think that kind of fits in here. So
yeah, I was just going to ask you about that, because I think this is one of those interesting things where you just mentioned that, Jesus took time to get away. Obviously, God rested on the seventh day of creation. The habit, the rhythm of rest is really common throughout the Bible. And it's one of those things where now science is kind of backing this up, right? Like even
right.
with our modern stuff about anxiety and depression, like that's so prevalent right now. I think a lack of rest, at least, is part of that, not all of it, but part of it. And so, yeah, can you tell, I was going to ask you about the adrenaline, because there's clearly a biblical precedent for this, but at the same time, there's also some science to back it up. So yeah, whatever you want to share about adrenaline.
Well, and yes, there is science to back it up. I don't think many pastors are aware of how much adrenaline plays a part in their ministry. But typically, we do use adrenaline. We use adrenaline when we're presenting, when we're up on stage, or teaching a class, or in front of a youth group, or leading worship, or whatever that may be. Adrenaline is a part of that. So our body responds, reacts, and even if you feel comfortable in front of people, I don't necessarily feel nervous when I get up in front of people now, but my body is responding anyway, and adrenaline is being produced. And I think most pastors, if you're preaching or whatever, you feel that Sunday afternoon where you just kind of take a dive, so to speak. And so if that's true, and we're using adrenaline in our jobs on a consistent basis, that peak of adrenaline and fall off of adrenaline and back up again and down again, our bodies kind of begin to use that and adjust to that. So if you're depleted, if you're tired, your body is going to produce enough adrenaline, and you kind of help yourself to do that too, to produce enough to get the job done. You want to preach well, you want to lead well, you want to teach well, and you can do that. And there's enough there to be able to do that. And then you get that piece done, that job done, that up in front of people part done. And then physically, your body lets go of that adrenaline, and it begins to go down again. Yeah. That can put us in a lot of trouble physically. And if that's what we're running on, and not out of rest and renewal and fulfillment and sufficiency, then it's going to cause some physical problems and stress that may come out in various ways: physical, medical problems, tension, backaches, headaches, all kinds of things that can, be a result of that. But I think pastors need to look at that. Am I functioning out of being rested and having plenty of time with Jesus and being in the Word, and my soul's in a good place? Things are well with my soul, so to speak. Or if I really am honest, am I using my body's ability to be able to kind of pump myself up again to get the job done? And adrenaline is a part of that. And if so, then yeah, we definitely need a sabbatical at that point, or we're really going to be in trouble. And a sabbatical is not a fix-all. We need to do ministry in the right way all the time.
Yep.
And so if we get in habits of abusing ourselves, or not getting enough rest, not taking enough downtime, if we're used to giving our spouse our worst day, and a lot of pastors do, they pick their day off as their worst day of the week, and they give that to their family. That's another prescription for disaster. Because your family is suffering, and you're going to suffer. So there are a lot of things about all of this. It's not just taking a sabbatical, A sabbatical is a piece of pastoral health, of flourishing. We're going to be providing a webinar series, a 2-part series in October.
Okay.
Bill Clem, who is the director of flourishing at Western Seminary in Portland, Oregon, is going to be leading this October 11th and 18th, 11 a.m. Central. It's a webinar. It's going to be open to all ministry leaders for us as MBs, and just talking about that. How can we as pastors and ministry leaders flourish and be rested and work out of a place of health and rest and renewal and not just using adrenaline to get us through. So that's my little speech for the day.
No, that's great. I'll always love it when science and medicine back up biblical principles. Like, to me, that's just more and more proof that God's real, right? There's this stuff been around for thousands of years, but we're finding new evidence for it. So I have one question for you, Don. This is a personal question for me, because I've been at my church almost 10 years, and I guess early last year, the staff came to me and asked if I wanted to take a sabbatical. And here was my thought, Don. I would really like to do that. I hope I can do one sometime soon. But the first thing that crossed my mind is I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old at home. And so if the purpose of this, if part of the purpose of a sabbatical is to give me a rest, if I was home for 3 months with a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, I'd probably come back more stressed than rested. So I'm probably not the only one in that exact situation. But for people whose stage of life is just, it might be really difficult to actually unplug, whether it's home responsibilities or, geographic, whatever the details are. Should we take one anyway? Should we wait till life calms down? What would your pastoral advice be for those kinds of situations?
So now you've caught me, because I've never taken a sabbatical in that, stage of life. I would say, yes, take a sabbatical. For one, that's going to be priceless time with those kids at that age. You may not, I can see your face right now. You're going, not so sure about that.
The memories would be great. The day-to-day might be pretty hard. Yeah.
I do think that within a sabbatical, there needs to be some intentional time about, like I said before, just getting away by yourself. So if a couple of those could be incorporated, being away for a week in a cabin, or, I went to the beach and just spent a week at the beach. That's my favorite place in all the world. Walk up and down the beach and pray, and, there's nothing better for me. But if you could find some of those elements to fit into that, so it's not just, babysitting kids for 3 months. Yeah, but, I think you would have to think through that. Obviously, is that possible at this stage of life? Do I wait until the kids are in first grade and, third grade or whatever that would be? Maybe that's better. I don't know. My heart says you could benefit regardless, and having that time away probably would look different than what your mind is wanting to paint that would be like. But I'm sure there would be some, interaction with kiddos and toddlers that are running around and having to chase after them. But how could you intentionally build some time in that's much more sabbatical oriented for renewal and refreshment?
And similarly, I'm sure some people, maybe they're 7 or 8 years in, they're eligible for a sabbatical, like technically, but maybe I'm sure some people might say, well, I don't feel like I need it. Like, I'm kind of running. I feel like my ministry is going well. I want to hear you talk about that, because I also know, like, unfortunately, there's not necessarily in our family, luckily, but like, there's just scandal after scandal of pastors doing horrible things, right? And I think, again, rest isn't the only thing that saves us from those, but you're talking about running on fumes, and that, how can that not be part of the equation when bad things happen? So if someone is in a spot where they're feeling okay, they feel like they don't need rest, but maybe, is that just a good idea just to keep us in kind of health anyway, especially if we're kind of just guarding ourselves from things that might stumble in other ministry areas? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I would ask, are you going to wait until you're in trouble and then take a sabbatical?
Right.
That doesn't make sense to me. So even if you feel like you're in good shape, those rhythms that God has given to us of rest. We need to recognize they're there for a reason. That rest is something that God takes seriously. And I would say you're probably not quite as in great a shape as you think you are. And you're probably more in need of some rest and refreshment than you might think you are. But we get in such patterns and routines, and this is who we are, this is how we function, this is what we do, that we don't even recognize that there might be something different out there. Maybe a different pattern, or a breaking up of that pattern would be a really good thing, and it's not a bad thing. Ministry will continue on, like we said before. I'm not indispensable. My wife and I will be okay, or my husband and I, if you're in ministry and you're a woman, we would be okay if I take 3 months off, and I'm around the house. All those things that we tend to say to ourselves to talk ourselves out of it, I think sometimes we're just fooling ourselves. We're kidding ourselves. We need to really focus in on that and say, what's really going on here that I would think that way? When God thinks differently about that and about rest, why do I think that I don't need that rest? I guess is one thing I would want to say, one question I would have.
Yeah, good. Yep, that's very important. All right, Don, well, our time's going fast here. We can begin to wrap up here, but I guess kind of 2 final questions. I guess, so did it work for you? Like when you stepped back in the office, did you feel kind of ready to go? Did you feel refreshed? Did you have some new ideas? And then just any other last thoughts you want to wrap us up with as we can begin to close here today?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was a great 3 months. And there's one thing I wanted to share too, that I thought about. Doing some special things, I think, is important. Things that you'll remember, like being in Brazil, being on a beach and alone with God. Those are things that I'll always remember. My wife and I went on a cruise together. That's something we've done one way long time ago, but that was a very special time. But the last thing that we did, almost at the end of the sabbatical, is we got tickets for an Andrea Bocelli concert. He was here in Oklahoma City. I don't know if you know Andrea Bocelli, world-renowned tenor. Matt, I can't tell you, that was just an amazing experience. Something my wife and I will remember, until we're no longer on this earth, kind of a thing. And it just a really fulfilling way of kind of putting an exclamation point on that time. Doing those kinds of special things, yes, that's important. And so when I came back, I was feeling refreshed, renewed, somewhat retooled by doing some of the reading and things that I had done, reconnected with God, kind of feeling some direction for the future. That had been an intention going in. So I can't say everything I wanted to accomplish in those 3 months was accomplished, but a lot was. And it was so beneficial. And I feel like here I'm 2-3 months after that, maybe even longer than that. It's a little long, about 2.5 months, but I'm still feeling the benefit from that. And I think that will last. I also have some talking points with my board that I have coming out of that will be talking points for the future. And that's valuable as well. So, if I hadn't experienced that, it'd been kind of, it was a great 3 months off, vacation. That was about it. I wouldn't be here talking with you. I would not be advocating for those 3 months and that time of sabbatical, that intentionality. I'm an advocate for it. I'll sit down with you as a pastor. I'll go to bat for you if you want me to. I'll write a letter to your board, whatever you want me to do, because I believe in it so much, and our guys and women need it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it can become, the running on fumes can become so normal that we forget what air feels like, right? And so
Right. Yeah,
I
for
imagine
sure.
that was very nice for you. So that's great. I'm glad you're so supportive of it. I'm in full agreement that it's very important for our ministry leaders to do. So thanks for modeling that, because I'm sure it maybe was a little tricky for you to figure that out and to make that happen, but I think it's a really good thing. So,
Yeah.
All right, Don, well, thanks for talking to us today. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, I really appreciate this. And I just want to say, I think we're about 62, 63 episodes in on Lead Pods. Matt, you do a great job with it. It's part of our U.S. conference ministry, and we hope people are experiencing that, using it. It's valuable. The other thing is, I think most of those episodes are on the website. There's kind of an archive of those. So all kinds of topics you can go to and get some information from people that are in the know about those things. That was our intention too, is kind of build a catalog where people can go and listen. So we hope you do that too. But just a big thank you to you, Matt, for all your work on this and the way that you've done it. Really good.
Well, thank you, Don. Thanks for your support of the podcast. Appreciate all that you do. So thanks for your time today. Thanks, Don.
You bet.
Technology and social media are here to stay. If you've wondered about technology's influence on the church, exactly what the metaverse is, or how to manage screen time for children, you'll want to read the September-October issue of the Christian Leader magazine. You'll also read news, stories, and columns from across our U.S. Mennonite Brethren family. Subscribe to our print magazine or read the September-October issue online at www.christianleadermag.com. Christian Leader, connecting and informing our USMB family since 1951.
Well, once again, thank you, Don, for spending time with us. Thank you for your support of the podcast and for sharing with us today. Just lots of really good things for all of us to consider and think about there. I loved his stuff on adrenaline and just the reminder that science really does back all this stuff up. Our bodies, our minds need rest. Lots of really good stuff there. So if you're in a season where if you're eligible for a sabbatical, but you've been kind of putting it off, whether it's just a busy season or you're not sure if you need that, man, I really encourage you to do that. Take advantage of that opportunity. It really will be good for you and your church family. So I encourage you to do that. And again, thanks to Don for backing us up and encouraging us and reminding us how important that is. Okay, well, wherever you are, again, I'm so grateful for you taking time to listen today. Thank you for being here. Hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time for the Lead Pods.
Thanks for listening to Lead Pods. Make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing to our show wherever you're listening today. Learn more by visiting usmb.org. And be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll see you next time as we learn more practical tools to increase our impact together.